stand up for women, stand up for biological reality, stand up for the truth, for fairness, for justice, for, having a moral compass, which is what Paula's done so well. I think, of course, what CBL has done so well, and what we're encouraging more people, especially, like you mentioned, more of those young women to find their voices, because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's fantastic when you have a president who is in office doing the things that you voted for, but it relies on us as Americans too.
Welcome back to Gen Z Unplugged. This is week 2 of our special series featuring speakers from our annual DC Summit. Today we're sitting down with Riley Gaines and Paula Scanlan, two fearless voices leading the charge to protect women's sports. From the University of Pennsylvania's apology to recent groundbreaking federal action, they break down the wins, the backlash, and why this fight is far from over. Let's get into it. Today we have Riley and Paula Scanlan. We are going to be chatting about the recent news with keeping men out of women's sports, which is incredible. And with the past couple of years, we've seen an attack on women's sports and keeping men out of our locker rooms. And now recently in the news, we have seen a huge victory with that. And we would love to kind of hear you guys' thoughts and kind of your experience, because you've been really heading this whole thing.
Absolutely. You want to speak about the news from UPenn, given that you really... I think everyone around the country lived it, not even just necessarily swimmers or those who had to directly compete against Thomas. Like, we've all been living this cultural, being plagued by this cultural chaos, but I think you should speak to the UPenn news specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Trump administration pulled the federal funding from the University of Pennsylvania a couple months back. University of Pennsylvania came back and said, hey, please give me the money back. And they said, okay, sure. And so in this negotiation and trying to get this federal funding reinstated, the University of Pennsylvania agreed to issue an apology to all of us on the team, update our team record boards to reflect not having Thomas be a female record holder. And then the last part of it is update their policies to actually comply with Title IX and truly be what Title IX was supposed to be and have women's sports for women. So it's a great win, but it's a first step. And I think there's a lot of work still left to be done, but that's really been the greatest win just really recently in the last week. And so,
yeah, I think over the past few years, it's been one of the most monumental things, because it shows, I think, the first step ultimately towards justice, which I will add, it's impossible for University of Pennsylvania or any institution or any bad actor who has contributed to the mistreatment, the abuse, the emotional blackmail, the harm of women like we've seen the past few years. It's impossible to undo the harm that's been done. But I think the first step to justice, and especially towards accountability, is admitting you were wrong, which is effectively what University of Pennsylvania is doing, specifically by apologizing and restoring the records, and to say we'll follow the law, which it's amazing to me that it's like considered this huge victory, and we're celebrating that we have an institution that receives federal funds say, hey, we will follow federal law. Like, that seems like the bare minimum, really. But nonetheless, it's a huge win. We've also seen recently, just in the past few weeks, where the Supreme Court will now hear oral arguments for a case surrounding Title IX, which is huge. This is something that we have been anticipating. I'll speak for me and Paula at least, and I would imagine many conservative organizations, we have been desperate for a Title IX case to get in front of the Supreme Court, because I think as it stands now, the votes are there. What I predict, it will be a 6-3 ruling with a scathing dissent written by the liberal justices who disagree with the fact that women deserve to call themselves champions. But nonetheless, hopefully that's some more exciting news that we will hear this fall. And we just found out this morning from Congressman Andy Barr, actually of Kentucky, that he is putting forward legislation ultimately to defend women's athletics. This has been done in the House before. Actually, this past year, it passed the House, went on to the Senate where it died. So hopefully now is the time, again, with an administration that is has taken such swift and decisive action, has fulfilled the campaign promise of keeping men out of women's sports. It's one of President Trump's most If you went to any rallies, which I know Paula, myself, we did, anytime he mentioned this part of his platform, keeping men out of women's sports, like the crowd, it was what they cheered for the most. I think, of course, obviously it's the thing that is so entry level common sense. It's what is, I think, unites so many people across the nation, regardless of what you identify as politically. But he's been able to fulfill those promises. So hopefully this time in the U.S. House and then further going on to the U.S. Senate, we see different results than we've seen the past few years where this has not been successful, especially under a Biden administration.
We are very hopeful because we see a lot of young women nowadays, speaking out of this issue if they experience it, stepping down from the podium. What would you say in regards to the previous administration where we just saw this all the time, and now, the last 4 years, and now we're seeing people actually being hopeful, seeing you guys and saying, no, this is wrong. I'm not going to stand for this. So what have you guys to say about all the young women who are stepping off podiums?
I'll just really quickly say, I grew up in a very liberal area, right? We have a lot of people that originally would have been very supportive of this. And I think the biggest shift I've personally seen, at least in the people I interact with day to day, is I talk to people who admittedly voted for Kamala Harris and tell me that they're supportive of this. They're saying something like, this is the one thing the Trump administration is getting right. And I think that shows culturally where we are, that this is transcending political parties. This is something that really common sense Americans agree with. And that's something that couldn't have been said 4 years ago.
Yeah, I'll just say, while we have certainly seen wins under President Trump, whether that is, again, day one, signing an executive order declaring there are only two sexes, those sexes being male and female, signing an executive order barring men from participating in women's sports within any educational program that receives federal funds. Obviously, this recent news out of UPenn, like there have been so many wins. All that to say, it's fantastic, but we need to see a revival and a revolution amongst the culture. We need those people who Paula is referring to, right? Those people who maybe live in a liberal town or go to a liberal college or whatever it is. They need to find the wherewithal to understand, I think, number one, the trajectory of where we were going. Even with an administration that is moving as quickly and emphatically as President Trump is doing, you still have bad actors, again, of course, who aren't following. People like Governor Newsom, people like Governor Mills of Maine, both of which are being sued by President Trump's administration by the Department of Justice. So clearly, you still have people who aren't willing to abide by the law. It's going to take every single person, regardless of any identity factor, regardless of if you're a man or woman, regardless of if you're old or young, gay or straight, black or white, like none of those things matter. It's up to us as human beings, as Americans, as taxpayers, to oppose this movement. And I think not even necessarily oppose. I don't like that language because I think it's how you get labeled as anti something when you say oppose. Not even necessarily oppose the movement, but more so stand up for women. Stand up for biological reality, stand up for the truth, for fairness, for justice, for, having a moral compass, which is what Paula has done so well. I think, of course, what CBL has done so well, and what we're encouraging more people, especially, like you mentioned, more of those young women to find their voices, because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's fantastic when you have a president who is in office doing the things that you voted for. But it relies on us as Americans too.
Yeah, it's such an exciting time. And thank you guys for really heading this and for being that person for young women to look up to. Especially, I was a college athlete, and thank goodness I never had to deal with having a man in my locker room or, playing against one. But for you guys out there giving hope to a lot of young women who have experiences as well, it's just beautiful to see. So thank you for all the hard work that you guys do.
Well, thank you.
Hi.
Thank you.